Building highways is what we do, but environmental protection during road construction is also important. You, the contractor, have a role to play in not only building your project, but working with TxDOT in continuing a Texas tradition of protecting our waters and our wetlands from contaminated stormwater runoff. Welcome to the Texas Department of Transportation's training on stormwater. This stormwater training has been developed as part of TxDOT's Environmental Management System, or EMS. It is critical that you understand the importance of how managing stormwater runoff during construction projects helps us protect the environment and maintain compliance with environmental laws and regulations. In this training, you are going to learn about several important topics, including how stormwater issues are a part of the EMS, why stormwater controls are required by the Clean Water Act, and why the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan must be followed. We will show examples of stormwater controls, recognizing that there is both a right way and a wrong way, and the environmental impacts that can occur from controls not being installed correctly. Finally, you will learn what to do when runoff and erosion occurs and how inspections and communication must occur to correct and record the problem. All environmental requirements are a part of TxDOT's EMS. So, each environmental requirement of a road construction project must go through the EMS circle of Plan, Do, Check, Act. The circle includes 1. Ensuring the laws are properly identified. 2. Communicating the requirements through the plans and specifications. 3. Inspecting the project and correcting the problems. 4. Measuring to see how we are performing to continually improve. There are many laws and regulations that can apply when a construction project begins, especially as it relates to water. For this training, we are going to look at the environmental requirements for stormwater. Some projects are developed in more environmentally sensitive areas, and therefore more careful attention must be paid to planning and good management practices during construction. But no matter where the project is located, Stormwater Best Management Practices, or BMPs, always include a way to control erosion and sediment controls. Soil erosion and runoff that causes sedimentation can do environmental harm not only during highway construction, but even after the project is built. So, what do we mean by the terms erosion and sedimentation? Erosion occurs when wind, water, rain, or snowmelt carry away soil particles. Sedimentation is when the soil settles out of the water and accumulates. An example of sedimentation would be a sandbar in a stream bed or a large amount of soil that accumulates in a concrete drainage channel. Where sedimentation occurs from construction activities, in a relatively short period of time, sediments can smother aquatic organisms such as freshwater clams and can ruin fish spawning areas. Any practice that protects soils from erosion and prevents particles from moving is erosion control. Any practice that causes particles to settle out after erosion but before it leaves the job site is sedimentation control. Erosion control is preferred over sedimentation control because that kind of control keeps soils in place and improves environmental protection. It also requires less maintenance than sedimentation controls, where accumulated sediment may need to be removed after every rainfall. Therefore, we should use erosion control as much as possible to protect water quality. Where we cannot, like after clearing, we should use sediment controls. But why do we even need these controls? Construction activities disturb soil. When it rains on a construction site, rainwater typically wears away or erodes the disturbed soil faster than if construction were not occurring. Construction is a major cause of erosion and sedimentation, which hurts the environment. Also, it is the law. Environmental laws require that we protect water quality during construction and establish a specific construction site management procedure. Erosion and sediment controls help achieve that goal. The major regulation that pertains to water quality is the Clean Water Act. The Clean Water Act prohibits the discharge of pollutants into any waters of the U.S. The state of Texas, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, has been given authority by the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, to enforce this law under a program called the Texas Pollution Discharge Elimination System. Get ready for the acronym TPDES. But both the EPA and the TCEQ can inspect your project to check if the law is being properly followed. They can also issue a notice of violation, which could include monetary penalties if the compliance is not occurring. Years ago, Congress recognized that virtually every construction project can cause water quality problems, and so they provided a general permit for construction activities called the Construction General Permit, or CGP. In essence, the CGP says that it's okay for a project to discharge small amounts of sediment provided that certain things are done to minimize the amount of the discharge. The CGP may include filing of a Notice of Intent, or NOI, with the TCEQ. A copy of the NOI also has to be posted at the construction site. The primary requirement of the CGP is the preparation and implementation of a Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, or SWP3. This plan explains all the controls or practices that will be used on the project to reduce the discharge of pollutants in stormwater. The SWP3 includes naming and locating on a site map all potential sources of pollution on your construction project, like the material stockpiles, fueling areas, vehicle storage areas, vehicle wash areas, concrete or asphalt plants, and the porta potties, just to name a few typical pollutant sources. The SWP3 will also identify the nearby water bodies, those that may be polluted if pollutants in stormwater runoff are not adequately controlled, like a nearby or adjacent lake, river, or stream. The SWP3 requires the contractor to establish certain site-specific BMPs that must be maintained during the construction phases of the project. These temporary BMPs include things like silt fences, rock gabions, catchment dams, litter control practices, and control of construction debris and materials. An SWP3 is also a part of your project plans and specifications, and it must be followed. The controls specified must be installed properly, and equally importantly, they must be maintained. Here are some examples of well-maintained controls. These silt fences have been properly installed and located. They will catch sediment or other debris or litter that may come off the project during a rainstorm. Here are some rock dams that slow down runoff so erosion will be minimized and sediments can be captured. These two examples show how one control tends to catch sediment, the other lessens erosion. Both kinds are needed to have true erosion and sediment control on a project and to mitigate impacts from construction to water quality. These features are intended to slow down flow and allow silt to settle out. Other BMPs can include soil retention blankets, slope roughing, earthen dikes, drainage swales, sediment traps like hay bales, check dams, surface drains, pipe slope drains, level spreaders, storm drain inlet protection, and rock outlet protection. Other BMPs may focus on stabilizing construction entrances and proper equipment washing to prevent tracking soil and dirt from the job site and onto the road. The Construction General Permit also requires regular inspections and record keeping, especially before a rain is predicted and right after a rainfall. Records of activities such as performing required inspections and maintenance document that we are compliant with the permit. Remember though, no matter what kind of controls you use, if those controls are not properly installed and maintained, this means that our water and other natural resources could be damaged. Your favorite fishing hole will be full of silt and not fish. This also can mean that flood hazards may be increased. Impacts to drinking water supplies may result in increased water treatment costs, and so on. And again, BMPs must be correctly installed and kept up so the project will be compliant with EPA and TCEQ rules, compliant with your project plans and specification, and meet the goals of the TxDOT EMS. If the project is not in compliance, this could mean a project delay and/or fines from regulatory agencies. No one wants that. The Clean Water Act also requires permanent controls to be installed as construction in a given area is completed, and those controls must also be maintained throughout the life of the project. Now that you have seen examples of proper BMPs, here are some examples of controls that are not in compliance with the SWP3 or the regulations. Have you seen examples like these? Because the SWP3 identifies the BMPs that you have chosen to be installed for the project, you will need to make sure that the controls are actually installed, properly located, and if those controls are working or not. If controls are not working, then they need to be repaired, replaced, or relocated. This is done through self-inspections. The plans will describe the means for communication between TxDOT inspectors and construction crews with instructions and schedules for inspections. Make sure that those instructions and schedules are discussed and understood. The SWP3 must be changed based on the results of the inspections to better control pollutants in runoff. The SWP3 also requires the contractor to establish certain site-specific stabilization practices with a schedule of when they will be used. The SWP3 will ensure vegetation is not disturbed in areas where it is not necessary, and that practices like tree protection, establishing new grasses or vegetation, and mulching help stabilize the work areas as soon as possible. Stabilization is required even when work in one area of the project has temporarily stopped. It is to everyone's benefit to follow the SWP3 and to communicate what is in the plan. Ignoring needed changes to the BMPs and not properly keeping documentation and records is a permit violation and may lead to regulatory enforcement action. Intentional and willful violation of the CGP may result in criminal prosecution and imprisonment. Good communication includes bringing up issues during the pre-construction meeting, holding regular project meetings, copying inspection records for circulation, making notes, and having proper documentation. If you have questions on the SWP3 or how to communicate the information, the TxDOT engineer or construction inspector should be contacted. The TxDOT engineer or construction inspector can help identify and resolve any potential water quality issues, permit compliance issues, and how to follow TxDOT procedures. Proper communication between TxDOT and the contractor ensures the correction of any storm water control problems. In conclusion, remember that the overall goal for water quality is to protect that resource during and after construction. We should constantly ask, is erosion being controlled? Is sediment being contained? Is the potential for contamination to waters being minimized? Are any contaminating materials being exposed to runoff? We also need to ask, are BMPs installed and working correctly? Am I following the SWP3 for inspecting erosion and sediment controls? And finally, are my SWP3 records up to date? Ultimately, stormwater management has 5 goals. 1. Minimizing erosion. 2. Catching sediment before it leaves the site. 3. Stabilizing disturbed soil in areas after working. 4. Inspecting and maintaining BMPs and practices. 5. Recording inspections and changes to correct the SWP3. That way, stormwater management means we stay in compliance, help minimize pollution, and thus we have a win-win-win situation for the construction project, for TxDOT, and for the waters of the state of Texas.